Welcome back to the Mid-Year Mitch YouTube channel. Today's episode, we're back on the 63 split window behind me, and we're installing a brand new front end from Dynamic Corvettes. So be sure to stick around. But the split window is back. We need to get a front end on it. So we have this front end from Dynamic Corvettes. If you remember, a couple months back, we had an issue with another front end that it was too short in the door area. Things weren't lining up, it wasn't looking right. So I talked to him, he ended up ordering this front end, and we started putting inner fenders in it. We have them glued in the front, and we left them loose everywhere else, so that way we can set our hood curvature right. But the first step is going to be to mock this front end up. There's some extra fiberglass on it in this area, so we got to do some trimming before we can even test fit this. Once we test fit it, we'll have to fix some of these flanges that are missing. There should be a piece here, and there should be a piece here that's missing. I also need to put the hinge pillars in. I like to build these cars without them. There's a piece of fiberglass that goes in the door jamb here. I like to build it without that, test the front end, make sure everything fits, then put it in, make sure it fits with the front end and glue it. It's kind of a repetitive process. It's not how the factory did it, but sometimes when you rebuild things and you have parts from different cars, things can stack up. I just like to be safe, so that way I don't get bit by it. So we have some prep work to do. We have to grind some of these humps and lumps and bumps. So I'll do that, get this front end prepped, and we'll see if we can get this thing mocked up on here. So I prepped a little bit of the firewall and laid the front end on here, and you can see the extra flashing that Dynamic leaves. They tooled this hood surround off of a new old stock piece. You can see they left a little bit of extra around here, up through here, and along here. All of this is just from their mold. They left it there in case you need it. So I think we're gonna trim, maybe not all the way up, leave a little bit of a gap here just in case we need it. We eventually need to cut these wiper areas out, but we also need to, which I forgot, that we're gonna have to cut out the area here for the control arm. There's typically like a little square notch there that lets the control arm go into the inner fender. It's just a smooth inner fender that they sell for resto mods. So we'll have to slowly whittle those away to get this nose to come down, because this should be, I don't know, a lot closer to these bumper brackets. I roughly trimmed out the wheel wells so that way we could get the front end to sit down on here and we could really test our door gaps. And if you remember the last time we had a different front end on this car, we had a similar problem. Now if I pull this back, I can get this to look a little bit better, but not a whole lot. The other side looks a lot better, but this to me looks a little bit flat right here. So I don't really trust that. Up here, Dynamic left some extra material here, and I still have to do some trimming to be able to get this thing to really fit perfect. But you can see we're having some fitment issues. So I don't like to do this, but unfortunately, I think we're gonna have to change doors. We could build those other doors up, but if you look in this area, this appears to have a lot more curvature than our other door. I also took some measurements from this peak here to this peak back here. I measured this body line, the bottoms of the doors. They do vary on the doors that are on the car from side to side. So I'm thinking some work has been done. I do know this is a replacement door skin. You can tell by the inside that it's a hand-laid door skin, where I believe that one is a original door skin, but these doors were on a car, they've been body worked, they were painted, and someone decided not to use them. Either the car was wrecked or to change the front end and realize the doors didn't fit too well. Unfortunately for Corvettes, there's no steel in the perimeter of the door. So there's a outer skin and an inner structure that's all fiberglass. And there's a flange here about that thick that they glue them together with. So you could sit here and sand this back a good ½ inch before you break the seam of the door. So for like on a Camaro, if you did that, you would sand you just sand the thickness of the metal, you'd break through where the skin is, and the skin would be able to be removed. So it'd be like, what, a 1/16 of an inch or something? Corvette and fiberglass parts are different. So if a car's part's been worked on a lot, that could lead to some discrepancies. So I switched out both doors, and already I'm seeing big improvements. If we look down at it like that, you really can't see any black, just a little bit here. This front end could possibly come back a hair, but there's some interferences here. But already you can see this is parallel, this is even, but this is already a pretty nice door gap. That looks pretty good. I need to shim the bottom of the door. The door fits the opening pretty well. So I think those other doors could have been damaged from a wreck or just manipulated to fit a different car. Now this side is a little wider, but we're still getting to the point where that's almost runnable right there. So I think we're looking pretty good. This door top fits pretty good. Unfortunately, the gap's a little bit wider here, and I have to try to steer the bottom of the door to line up with the quarter at the bottom. But that's looking pretty good. I think these doors are going to work. So I took the doors off and I started fitting in the door jamb fiberglass, and I was able to get the front end to come back more because the inner fender was running into the shock tower. So I just made a little bit of clearance and it naturally came back. So that all looks good. Before you glue these in place, make sure you have your body rivets installed that go from the fiberglass into the steel. There's a whole row of them along the rocker. There's 2 under here, 1 over there. I generally like to save the door jamb fiberglass till right before I put the front end on, just to make sure everything fits right. You want to make sure, especially if this came off of the same car, your fiberglass cut lines up with the hole in the steel. You also want to make sure your holes here are centered up nice, and make sure that your fiberglass flows nice through here. And this all looks like it flows pretty well. So I'm ready to glue these guys in. I'm happy with the way they fit, but you can see we have some extra flashing in here. We're gonna leave that until the very end where we sand the door gap to make them exactly how we want. We'll probably remove all of it. I don't know yet. And it's a little easier to sand it than it is to add it, because you can see here it overhangs. You just scuff this and you can fill this full of Duraglass, fiberglass filler, bonding adhesive is what it was originally. And that's how they sculpted these openings to fit originally. Undid my clamps, I ground the door jamb gap a little bit, and I ground the underside of this and the top of the hinge pillar, and just have something that we can use as a straight edge. Trailing arm shim works pretty well, but if you see we slide that down, we are pretty much touching everywhere we need to. Now originally, these cars didn't have the best fit, so you may have to do some work, and also you can see that this has been sanded. So this point, see how sharp this line is? It kind of fades away. So there is a little bit of a deviation, but this door is probably gonna have to get a light skim coat just so you can sharpen the lines up and smooth everything out. These will both be blended together. On this side, we have the same story. I was able to sand a good bit of this flange out. That did help this come down. And this little bit of flashing that's in here does stick down lower. So if you remove some of that, it will let this panel sit down. And I'm pretty happy with the fit on this. Again, it's pretty close to being perfect. So what I need to do though is to add a little bit of fiberglass filler from here and taper it down here, because you can see that we have a void in here. It fits nice if I put a clamp here, but we need something to back that. So put the fiberall on the pillar over here, and that pretty much cured up. I didn't sand it yet, but that's about where it needs to be. Once I sand it, it should be pretty much perfect. And while that was curing up, I cleaned out the threads on the hood so I could bolt the hood hinges on to check to make sure that our fenders, inner fenders, were at the right height. I have about 2 or so shims under each side, which that's fine. This is still gonna get body worked and painted. There's gonna be some material, so that'll thicken all that up. So that's kind of right where we want that. And you can see we have a nice looking gap at the front. This side here is still movable. We left that loose, so that way when you push up on the inner fender, if you can see that gap close up, we can flex that. Now the hood doesn't have any pins or anything in it, so this side's a little high and that side's a little low. It is a little bit off here. I have some wiper grills I kind of want to bring here and test it to see how our height looks compared to that. But that can all be adjusted a little bit if need be. I think that looks good. So I think that passed the test. I sanded the fiberglass filler we put in here to build this up, and this looks perfect. I also mocked up all my clamps to make sure that we have everything pushed down properly. I always recommend doing that before you put any glue out, and also make a pile close by with all your extra clamps in case you have it on here and you realize you need a clamp somewhere else. I wanted to show you this bonding strip. I took a scrap of a piece of a fender cap and I cut it off here, and I was missing this whole chunk. Well, if you want a bonding strip that fits your panel, why not use another piece of the panel? So it fits on here pretty much like that. So I glued it on both sides and kind of filled it in with a little bit of glue, and I had to do one on the other side in this kind of area. So I did that. I also came through and installed the solid rivets here to attach the firewall to the birdcage the whole way across. We had to remove those when we took the car apart. So I have the back of the front end glued on Made sure we put enough clamps on it to keep everything sucked down. I really wanted to pay attention to this body line, our door gap, and then everything else kind of falls into place once both sides are happy like that. Just made sure everything's touching, cleaned everything up with my glove, and it all looks good. Now I'm working on getting the front of the front end mounted. So if you can see these little recess holes here, there are some little dimples here to tell you roughly where the core support goes. So I threw a couple body mount bushings and some shims in there, mocked this core support up. Now I did fit this before I glued the front end to make sure I was in the right ballpark, but this time I actually shimmed it up and made sure that our holes are in the correct spot. It looks like everything lined up, so I drilled these holes, and then I screwed in the nut plate back here, which I found out Vet Masters actually makes those, which is pretty cool. So I have that guy screwed in. So now that we know that these holes line up, I want to go ahead and install the core support, and then we can drill our holes through, because this nut plate has a bunch of, I believe it gets 3 rivets per nut plate. So I want to make sure the core support fits properly. The nut plate can kind of move back and forth. So let's get the core support in and let the core support tell us where those nut plates go. Then we'll rivet that in. I have the dynamic side fenders laying out here. I wanted to show you, even though these have a really nice surface finish, these are still like a hand-laid type part, and you're gonna have some of this extra flashing in here that your nail can catch on the whole way around the part. There was a flange here, and someone came and sanded all this off after they took it out of the mold. So there's going to be some inconsistencies there that you need to work on before you really get into fitting it, where the original panel was made in a steel tool under high pressure, and it would have cut all those edges off and left you with a pretty clean, sharp edge. But this is still a nice panel. It has a really nice surface finish, but it's just something you have to keep in mind that you have some work to do. So we have to sand this area where that bonding strip goes the whole way across the top, this side, across the back where it grabs the inner fender, and then somewhere in here we'll need sanded for the firewall plenum. I'll wait on that one, but we can at least start prepping it so we can get it to fit on the car and see what adjustments we need to make. I let the front end cure up overnight and removed all the clamps. I brought some of my Vet Masters wiper grills, which I will have for sale on my store, just to mock up to help us fit the hood. You can see this is a nice gap. It's at the same height here. It's at the same height here. So we're going to use these to help locate our hood, as well as this little bump here. But next we have to put on the side gills, and I'm going to save that for next week. We have the core support mocked up in place. I need to do some more trimming on the inner fenders to let them roll out to the center of the car so I can get some bolts on either side, but it's all mocked up and it's all supporting itself. And we have to get the inner fenders glued in. You can see that they are not currently glued in. So we have to glue the top of it in, and we have to glue this side here, which you can flex to fit your hood. I started scuffing those panels to get them ready, and I think unfortunately this bonding strip seems like it's too low, so we're gonna have to play around with this to get everything to work properly, because I can't quite get the fender to sit in there properly, and this is a little too low. So I think they need to be careful with how they set up some of these bonding strips, but we'll test this side as well to see how it comes together. They gave us a little more overhang on this one, which I like, and we'll see about that's position. But it's a nice front end. It definitely takes finagling, like I said, because it's a hand-laid part. Still, you know, they leave some extra spaces to trim and to work with. But the door gaps, you can see, are much nicer than what we started with that other front end by switching doors and switching front ends. So this is all workable. I still need to do some sanding in here, but all this looks pretty nice. Everything will be body work together, but it's a nice Nice part, I think the customer will be very happy with the fit up, and whoever does the body work will have a little bit of body work to do on this side, but this was already sanded down. So I think a little bit of fiberall in like this area to help build up this body line and build up to this transition and sand this down just a hair, and that'll be pretty much perfect. But that's gonna do it for this video. If you enjoyed, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. We're coming up towards the end on this car. We're kind of on the home stretch. We have this couple videos to do on the front end, one on the hood, some little fiberglass stuff to do. Then we're pulling the body off the 58 Corvette. Both of these cars are gonna be going home. We'll be getting the 65 Roadster back in here and probably a 66 Coupe that I need to start on. But as you can see, I got a lot of work to do, and I'll catch you guys later.